Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Hey, revolutionaries, welcome back to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. How you doing, John?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Good. You look like you got some sun over the Memorial Day weekend.
No, the Memorial Day weekend where we go since 1989. So this was our 36th year, which you've joined us.
Since you were 10?
Yeah, was wow, is since I graduated from college. So that's how long it's been. Is in Lake Chautauqua, New York. It's great, but it was in the 40s. It was cold. But I got color because I'm working with Sandals and get to go to Sandals more than a dozen times this year. And last week I was in Sandals for the week working with their leaders, and it's such a really good
working
company.
With the lifeguard at the pool, or?
Yeah. So I did get some exposure on breaks to the sun.
Very nice. Nice. How are things going with Sandals?
They're great. They're going to be such a great company. They're so committed. They really get it. They have 20, I think, locations in the Caribbean, and it's a big project. It's just getting everyone to get it. But something that happened that was really cool was turning a negative into a positive. So at Montego Bay Sandals, they're right next door to the Montego Bay Airport. And literally it feels like it's 10 times an hour, and it might be more. There is a plane taking off right over, and you're at a resort, right? You might be getting a massage. You might be trying to fall asleep on, your by the pool or by the beach. You might be. And so that's annoying, and it's anti-escape experience. So when I'm there, as soon as, that plane takes off, everyone that works there just waves their hand. And you're like, what are you doing? And they're like, that's us telling them, come back soon. And it permeates to everyone. People are laying on their, recliner, whatever you call it, by the pool. And and people just wave. And it looks like everyone has Tourette's or something, all these, you just automatically do it. And so I'm speaking for 8-hour workshop, and 5-6 times an hour, all the audience just does it. And they don't even think about it. They don't look at each other. And it would be so funny if they recorded it, because I'm doing it. I'm speaking mid-speech, and, you gotta, beat the greet. And I'm like this. But it's so cool because you don't think of it as right. You don't think of it as a negative. And it is, but it's something like you're part of the tradition. And it reminds me when I worked with the Del Coronado in San Diego almost 20 years ago, they had a story that my kids were obsessed with and asked every employee about Kate Morgan. Over 100 years ago, Kate Morgan checks in at the hotel under an alias, Miss Lodi Bernard from Detroit. 5 days later, she was found dead on an exterior staircase leading to the beach, the victim of a gunshot wound to the head. The San Diego County coroner ruled her death a suicide, but some have speculated the possibility of foul play. So she was having an affair with some guy. Worst thing a business can have is a murder suicide, right? Can you imagine if it happened at our salons? I'd be like, oh my God, no one's going to want to come in. They've turned this into this ghost story that when you get there and you turn the TV channels on, it's a channel dedicated to the legacy of Kate Morgan. And my 3 boys were young at the time, and they asked every employee, every server, every cashier, tell me about Kate Morgan. And everyone was trained to tell a story. And they told the story of like, yeah, I was in, the bookstore or library, and the book just fell off the stage. It fell off the shelf. I know it was Kate Morgan. And, they all, and it just consumes them. But it's just funny how a few businesses can turn a negative experience into a legendary experience.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Have one of my favorite characters that we've talked about recently on podcasts, Norm. George Wendt, the Norm character from Cheers, passing. That was, instrumental. And we've talked about this, about 6 or 7 podcasts ago. The first working title of my first book, which became Secret Service, was Mastering the Norm Factor, that we ultimately changed to Secret Service. The whole book was in our customer service back in the early 90s, and hopefully still is, based on making people feel like Norm. And that when Norm walked in, Norm, and how do you make, it's easy to make the regulars, because we know them, but how do you make the person that comes in once or twice a year, or it's never been here, to feel like Norm? And that's where the whole Secret Service came in, of, cheating and having white capes versus black capes and, all that stuff. So, I think the Norm character had a profound impact on customer service.
So for our listeners, if you haven't listened to the Secret Service episode, I think that was episode 204 and 205 of the podcast. You'll hear some great Secret Service stories and how things started with making people feel like Norm. You also had a great cartoon in the last blog with Norm, and that's something that I can put in the show notes. If you are not a subscriber to our blog, it's another place to get great customer experience tips. So I'll make sure.
Yeah, Lindsay found that from our team, and it's Norm entering the gates of heaven, and all the angels have their hand up saying, Norm. And that was so clever.
That was good. I think I read that his nephew,
yes,
is the star of one of my favorite all-time series, Ted Lasso.
Jason Sudeikis. I say it wrong. I couldn't believe that. And I guess they had a really close relationship.
Yeah. I love that show. I heard it's coming back for a 4th season.
Season 4.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ted, we need more feel-good TV shows.
I tell you, I don't know. Have you watched Shrinking?
Yes. Yeah. I like Shrinking.
I love it. There's about 10 characters, and they're almost all equal. Like, it's not like there's one and I can't decide which one's my favorite. It's the first show I've ever come across that there's not a villain, and it works, right? There's not a real villain. Life is the villain. He lost his wife and went on a binge and wasn't as good a father, but there's not, the evil empire or something that you want to, do.
Right, that everyone's against. There isn't even a character that everyone's against.
Right.
That's true. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Huh. So the negative to positive, that's something that more companies could stand to work on, just taking and Ted Lasso is always great at that, right? Turning any negative into a positive. It would be a good never always for companies to never, accept the negative, always turn it into a positive.
Yeah. I think there's definitely an exercise, because I'm sure we all have it. In the spa, this always happens, but there's never enough soundproofing, as you know, because you started off in the salon. And so you'll hear conversations outside, so I always say, turn up the music louder, which isn't necessarily a nice spa experience. I said, give them headphones. But yeah, we got to think about that. Like, how do they spin that the customer isn't as angry as they're going to be because they didn't get that total relaxing, time in there.
Find that solution.
And you're right, because we're probably I'm sure we're apologizing for it. That I'm sorry they're so loud out there, or, whatever. And it'd be cool to be able to have something like the Sandals Resort does.
Yeah, what would that be for that?
I don't know. Maybe our listeners can tell us.
Yeah, come up with a good one for that.
Yeah.
Always Nevers, if our listeners have not heard of Always Nevers before, also sometimes referred to as the Customer Bill of Rights, is what we're going to be talking about today, John. So for those who are not familiar, what does the Customer Bill of Rights mean?
I love the Customer Bill of Rights. I think our clients love it because it is the easiest. We always start with this to implement. There are some nuances to it, but that's common sense. So customer bill of rights, client bill of rights, guest bill of rights, whatever you call your customer, is there certain things your brand should never do or always do. So if you think about, would you ever expect to, go to a Ritz-Carlton, go up to an employee associate with a name tag and uniform on and say, excuse me, can you tell me where the, Royal conference room is? And they say, I have no idea. And they walk away. Or you could check at the front desk. You know that they wouldn't do that. Would you ever expect to go to Disney and see a cast member, Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Goofy, on break, smoking a cigarette or chewing tobacco, spitting on the pavement in front of, no, there's certain things they would never do or always do. So that is where the customer bill of rights originated. And it's known as nevers and always. The biggest thing is it's to the enemy of a great customer experience is inconsistency and employee roulette. And employee roulette is when the level of your experience is dependent on which employee you get. And we're all guilty of that. And you could take it up a notch. It could be department roulette. I love dealing with this, but when I have to deal with the call center or I have to get moved to billing or whatever. And then, if you're a large multi-unit company, it could be location roulette or franchisee roulette. Like I like the restaurants in the Cleveland area, but when I go to Columbus, that's because it's a different franchisee. Well, I don't care, and so this is one of the best things that helps reduce employee roulette, department roulette, location roulette.
So does that mean each department, they don't have their own never always, they share with the rest of the company?
Yeah, typically the nevers and always, we try to limit it to 8 to 10. And they counter each other. We can get into that when we give some examples. But usually they're universal. It doesn't matter if you're working at a corporate office, if you're, and it should be what you're doing to team members, workers, employees, and strangers, customers, external and internal. There is some that the only other nuance we've created with clients is digital nevers and always, which we can get to that. Because if your primary interaction is email, maybe over the phone, whatever that may look like, that has its own nuance.
And how is a never always different than journey mapping, where you have, this is what happens at this stage, this is what we want to avoid?
Yeah, which we refer to that as creating your signature experience. Nevers and always, customer bill of rights means the same, is not stage specific. And what stage specific is journey mapping. So let's use the most basic experience that everyone has on this, whether it's going to a restaurant or going to the dentist office. They're almost identical stages. Stage 1, you call and schedule the appointment. Stage 2, you walk in and get greeted, hopefully, by the receptionist. Stage 3 is you go back with you worked in a dentist office. Who's taking me back to into the room? What would that person be
if
called?
You're there for a cleaning, the hygienist brings you back.
Hygienist, right? And that's kind of stage 3. Stage 4 is the dentist comes in and checks with the hygienist, the x-rays they took, and agrees that you have no cavities, you have some cavities. And stage 5 might be next step. Stage 6 is they walk you up front, check you out, book your next appointment. That's a typical almost any retail experience that takes appointments. So there's certain things in a customer journey thing that you have to do when a client calls. Answer it within 3 rings or whatever that is. Answer it with, thank you for calling ABC Dental. This is Denise. Whom do I have the pleasure of speaking to? That's what, whatever your business designs. When they walk in, greet them within 5 to 10 seconds. Confirm that they're down for the appointment, that you have their insurance, yada, yada. Those are stage specific. What we're talking about today as a customer bill of rights, nevers and always, aren't stage specific. They may or may not happen. If they do, never do it this way, always do it that way. So one of our examples is never say no. Okay. The always isn't always say yes. The always is focus on what you can do. And we could, go a little deeper in that. But the point is, today at work, whether you deal with 15 people or 25, you may not be put in a position to say no, right? That may not. Or you may be put in a position 5 times today, something you can't say yes to. So it may or may not apply today, but when it does apply, never do it this way, always do it that way. So some other rules. So it's not stage specific. You want 3 words or less. Like, you don't want sentences here. Never say no. Never is always implied. No, never point. The third one is, so it's not stage specific. It's 3 words or less. And the third one is remove personal interpretations. And what I mean is, don't say always be professional, never be unprofessional. What does that mean? And that's so ambiguous. If you wanted something like, we always return clients' voicemails and emails promptly, right? That, your promptly could be 2 hours, mine could be 2 days, and the newest employee could be 2 weeks. That's left for personal interpretation. So if you're going to have something like that, you would want a definitive, always return clients' voicemails and emails same day, 24 business hours, whatever you land on. But now there's no ambiguity where, you have your definition of promptly and I have mine. So that's removing personal interpretation.
Can you give some other examples of
never? Yeah. So, some obvious ones, but people tend to think they don't apply to them is never point, always show. So when we think of never point, we think of being physically at a restaurant, a hotel, when you ask someone where the conference room is, where's the restroom, where's the stairs, elevator. Yeah. Don't point, show. But we could be guilty of pointing over the phone in an email, oh, you can get that off our website. That's pointing. Versus let me send you the link to that. Or, I don't handle that. Denise does, but Denise is out of the office, until Monday. Maybe you want to try to call her on Monday. I'm sure she could help you with that. That's pointing versus let me see if I can get that for you. If I can't, can it wait till Monday? I will make sure Denise calls you first thing. So those are some examples of that. No problem is a big one that is overused. No problem is a big problem for 2 reasons. It's 2 negative words. We shouldn't be using any negative words. But also, when you ask me of something, and if you ask me for more water, whatever you're asking me, I say no problem. That means it's not inconvenient to me. And when we're serving someone, it's not about my convenience, it's about yours. So my pleasure, certainly, absolutely, I'd be happy to, or you're welcome. And the Ritz-Carlton and Chick-fil-A will both admit that they made a mistake 30 years ago, only giving their employees one option, my pleasure, because the 15th time or the 20th time that day, that hour, it didn't sound like my pleasure anymore. So you want to give them, 5 or 6 more professional options than my no problem. The 2 of my biggest ones, and they're all big, and we have a list of, probably 20, which you don't want to use all 20, is oversharing and forgetting you're on stage.
Can you give an example of what oversharing looks like?
Yeah. So oversharing is, and we overshare, for multiple reasons. One, we just overshare. Like, you didn't need to know. Like, if we would have got on. So I'll give you an example. I went to get a massage at my own salons years ago. And, I'm so excited. What's better than a massage, a 90-minute massage? This is going to be heaven. No, there wasn't airplanes taking off or it wasn't too loud. But when the massage therapist came out, I said, I can't remember her name. She doesn't work for us anymore. But
is this why?
Yeah. I said, hi, Denise, how are you? She's like, I have the worst migraine. And it's like, really? And I know she didn't tell me that because I was her boss. I guarantee she said everyone. And that's oversharing. Now I'm convinced I'm getting a 60, 70% massage, right? Even if maybe she's a trooper, but I'm convinced. And don't say it, stay home. But I didn't need to know that. But also in business, I think we tend to overshare because I want you, my customer, to know it wasn't my fault. I come up to get you for your 3:00 appointment. It's 3:15, 3:20. And, I've been waiting here, John, for 20 minutes. I'm sorry. They didn't tell me you were here. We've had a lot of turnover at the front desk and there's just, I'm sorry. It's been happening a lot lately. Again, you didn't need to know that. You didn't need to know about our dysfunctionality. If we have to take someone out back and beat them, that's our business, but just make it right. I apologize, Denise. I'm going to give you the full hour appointment, whatever it is, but you didn't need to know about, what's going on behind the scenes. And there's so many examples to every one of these. And the real key is to, land them in your parking lot and your employees' parking lots, meaning, all right, you may work front of the house, you may work back of the house, you may work on the phones, you may be out face to face, whatever that looks like. You may go to the client's location, they may come to us. You have to give examples so it applies, because this is getting ahead of ourselves. When I hear, never overshare, I'm like, yeah, Denise does that all the time. I don't do it, but I've heard Denise do it. But then when you give those specific examples, I'm like, oh, I have been guilty of that. Like, shame on me. And the other one that I think is really common is forgetting you're on stage. Be Snow White, right? And people pay a lot of money to see Snow White. They don't want to know that, they don't want to see her smoking a cigarette or on break or chewing tobacco or complaining about her boyfriend, right? And that would be forgetting you're on stage. So, but the boundaries of on stages, I think we forget. So let's go back to checking in for a doctor's appointment. You check me in, the receptionist checked me in. Well, a lot of times we think we're on stage when we're interacting with a customer. But now I go sit down and have to wait 5-10 minutes until the hygienist comes and gets me. Well, I can still see and hear the receptionist, and they may be talking about the last patient that walked out, which was, a Karen. And, they may be pulling out the Doritos. They may be talking about that, the doctor is in a crappy mood this week and didn't give them, next Tuesday off. All those things are on stage. And unfortunately, I have too many examples of our own businesses. But I even had one that hit me that I got criticized in a evaluation of speaking, right? So I'm literally on stage when I'm speaking in front of a large audience. Okay. I understand that. So now there's a break and everyone gets a 20-minute break. Then we're coming back and maybe we're going to breakouts or whatever the thing is. So, I grab my cell phone and I just beeline to the bathroom, and I am looking at what I missed in Slack and my kids' text and emails and maybe the score of the Cleveland Guardians game. And I'm just walking down, my head down and beelining. But 5 minutes ago, I was talking about another never and always: beat the greet. No one should say hi to you first. 15-5, you come at 15 feet of anyone, you smile and nod. You come within 5 feet, you say something, right? I just didn't do that. And so someone wrote, they did it nicer than this, but their message was, you're being a little hypocrite, and I forgot that I'm still on stage when I'm off stage. If they can still see me, and a lot of people thankfully liked what I had to say, and there's he is, and I want to tell him I liked her. I want to tell him a story about, something, and I'm just head down, scrolling through my phone, going to the bathroom. And, so it was a painful, necessary lesson. And there's a lot examples of, forgetting you're on stage, even oversharing and on stage. I've had this happen where I'm literally on stage and all of a sudden the screen goes dark. My slides aren't up there anymore. And hey guys, what's going on here? Like, they're panicked. They're working on it. They didn't need me to call them out. And I've done this presentation, 1,000 times. I know what the next slide is. So, hey, that AV team, is great. They're working on it, and just keep on going. And it's never lasted more than 10, 20 seconds, which when you're on stage and you give, it feels like 10, 20 minutes. But, if it's happened, 6 times in my career, the first 4, I would call them out and act like they didn't. Hey, guys, where's my slide? It's stupid. It's showing frustration publicly and oversharing. Just keep on going. Make it that's part of the show. I don't have a slide here because I want to, really you to focus on what I'm saying here. And it's never been, like I said, more than 20 or 30 seconds till they, someone hit the cord or whatever, so that's our example.
Yeah. They're already panicking. They don't need you to.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my favorites, so I don't think you mentioned, is the I don't know.
Yeah.
Never say I don't know.
Well, I'm okay with never only say I don't know. I like the transparency there. I don't want you to pretend you know how to do heart surgery or, whatever it is.
I don't know how to wield a scalpel.
Yes. Yeah. Never only say I don't know. Let me find out. Right. Versus if you don't, I have no idea. You could check at the front desk. Well, now you're pointing again. versus let me go check for you. Let me see if we have an opening for, a manicure, or if we can get, John can bring books to the keynote for you, or whatever that may be.
So a lot of these sound like common sense.
Yeah.
So is it really necessary for a company to write these out?
I believe so. I've never had a client that thought, they didn't need them. I mean, again, these are probably our clients' favorite thing to do because they're easy to understand, easy to execute if they're top of mind. And if you teach your employee why that's unprofessional, most employees wouldn't think no problem is unprofessional. Most employees probably wouldn't, realize that's oversharing or whatever, these things are. So you're raising their service aptitude, but also when you think about it and you look at, the examples that we give and the potential examples is, God, that never column happens way too much here. And that always doesn't happen enough. And then you think about yourself as a customer. I'm sure the 3 or 4 or 5 we just went through, it sparked someone's mind that just happened to me as a customer. So, you got to be brilliant at the basics. And if this is all you do, you will move the needle significantly. If you're able to say, John, Denise, anyone, in 3 months after we've trained our employees on this and tested them, you can come to any location, deal with any employee, call anytime, and we would never do this. We'd always do this. That's really moving the needle.
Basics. I think you're right. When you look at Chick-fil-A, people remember, even if it is repetitive, they remember the my pleasure, that nothing is ever a problem there. It's their pleasure to serve you.
Right. And they get 19-year-olds to do that.
So how do you roll this out so that 19-year-olds will do this?
So the only negative about this is its simplicity and that it feels common sense. And so early on, the mistakes we have found our clients were doing was they create their list. And for some reason, people don't realize that, they think they have to create a brand new list and can't use the ones we share. Well, ours are all from other clients. Like, I didn't create, I don't know if I created any of these, right? It was from studying. So reuse them. You don't have to go, there's not enough that you can think of. I'm sure there's some that we don't use that you can use, but reuse them. They work for everyone. But what our clients 20 years ago, 25 years ago, before we realized to coach them not to do this, is they'd create their list. I'm showing a Credo card with our list, 8 to 10, no more than 8 to 10. So we have 10.
Share those with the listeners. Can I put that in the show notes for those who can't see it?
Sure.
I mean, for those that aren't watching on video, they'll be in the show notes.
And so while there's 20, 30 you can come up with, I always say 8 to 10 at the max, because you're going to have a better chance retaining those 8 to 10 than 30. And also, if you have them independent, so where they correlate is never point, always show. Never say no, always focus on what you can do. Those correlate. Some people have had never do this, and the always doesn't correlate. It's just an independent always. Well, now you technically have 20, and I need to understand, if you don't want me to do this, what's the way you want me to do it? So I always say, have them correlate, so you only have 10 that I have to remember. But what people have done in the past is they create their list, they create their posters, they create their Credo cards, put them on KeyBank, puts them on their mouse pads, however you advertise them, but they don't give context. So they create their posters, all their marketing that they're going to train their employees on, but they don't give context like I did. Right. And I gave general context because I didn't know what business we're talking about, but, never overshare. Explain how people can be guilty of oversharing in your team and in different departments, over the phone, face to face, at their property, forgetting you're on stage, all those, the ways we could say no, and that's hard at first. Focus on what you can do. What do you mean? Like if she wants an appointment now when we're totally booked, you just say, Denise, while we're fully committed right now, what we do have is later today at 3:00, tomorrow at noon, and I could put you on the waiting list. And, a good portion of the time, we get cancellations. It may not be what you wanted. Initially, you wanted to, get your appointment right now as you walked in. but that you got to teach people. So really giving them context of how it applies to them. Because again, when you don't give me the context, I immediately think, oh, I don't do that. I'm never guilty of that. I would have bet you, $100. I never forget I'm on stage. And then, boom, then I started thinking of more ways I forget I'm on stage, so it really helps spin that and how it applies.
Is that all you have for?
Yeah.
For rolling it out? Okay.
Oh, yeah, roll it out, certify. I'm sorry, I forgot the initial question. Certify, and then, do games, match, Advanced Financial had, what's that, the game you call when you have cards and you turn them over and you have an ace and you turn
like
another
memory?
Memory. Yeah. So Advanced Financial has a game like that. You turn over, never say no. And so you turn over this and it says, own it. All right. Well, that's not the match, but you got to remember where those were. So you're trying to find, so things like that. Ask your employees in a pre-shift huddle. Hey, Denise, if the never is never show frustration, what's the always? And hopefully Denise knows that. And then Denise, you have an example of maybe where you caught yourself almost or doing it or it happened to you. And that's a quick 30-second, but it's enlightening everyone, top of mind awareness of don't go out and show frustration. So the other example of that is I never show frustration. Really? Well, we could tell when you're running late because of the way you walk through the building, or we could tell when you just had a not so great call, because the way you come out and you punish, your 10:30 for what happened with your 9:30. Or, John's in a bad mood because he walked in the office today and, they didn't greet anyone, right? We forget that that's on stage and showing frustration. Be a duck, right? Gliding across the water, no one sees or knows. It's paddling like hell underneath. That's another favorite of people's.
Are there, you mentioned a couple mistakes that people make when rolling them out. Do you have anything else that people should avoid?
Yeah, that's a big, doing too many, more than 10. And, shockingly, but some people, some of our clients had to have things like never swear at the customer. That's where they were starting from. Right. And you got to start with that. I mean, as silly as it may sound, if that's never yell at the customer, wherever it is. So
like a hiring issue.
Yeah. Yeah. But I guarantee you the leaders were swearing at them. I think that's just the nature of their business. Doesn't mean it's right, but never have too many. Have them counter, don't have them independent because then that doubles them, and educate and give context to how they apply to each department so they realize. And then a fun way to roll them out is you can have employees do this to each other is a swear jar. I work next to you. Hey, Denise, you just told that client no. You're like, no, I didn't. Yeah, didn't she? Yeah. So you owe $1 to the swear jar and a reward for it. So, hey, Denise, that was awesome. You didn't overshare. You didn't say no, even though she was asking for something way out of our possibilities. But man, that was great.
Take
whatever.
$1 from the swear jar.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people with the swear jar will, after, a cruise, and it'll accrue a lot in the beginning, but it's just helping people bust on each other in a fun way and get them, in a habit. But that swear jar could be donated towards your charity or buy the next round of drinks when you go out for happy hour. So it's something fun.
Yeah. And how do you keep this alive once it's rolled out?
Like everything, and a podcast just dropped a key to top of mind awareness, keeping things top of mind awareness. Did you do that title or did I?
You did.
That was very clever. Oh, I thought for sure you did.
I just capitalized.
Okay. Okay.
You did on purpose, but I wanted to make it.
I did, but I don't remember doing it. And so I thought you did it. So a key to keeping your CX initiatives top of mind. That's a podcast. And it's about Key Bank and Kevin Sloan, their vice president of commercial banks, retail banking. And now that they've been doing this for 5 years, it's kind of the aftermath. The first 2 is easy because you're rolling out everything. It's momentum and, boom, boom, boom. It's how they keep this top of mind awareness. And so it's again, playing the games, recertifying people, reminding people, hey, Denise, the never is, what's the always? Can you give me an example of how, whether you've done it or what you have to be careful of in your job in that one person. So you're just constantly talking about it. So I'm going out and it's top of mind not to overshare. It's top of mind not to point, to say no, that type of stuff.
Are these included in a webinar or one of the membership workshops?
Yeah. It's the last workshop we did on live stream. I don't know if that was April. Well, yeah. So Q.
Along with the customer experience action statement?
No, we haven't done that yet for the live stream.
Right.
It might have been Q1, 2025. It was all focused on creating your non-negotiable standards, and it was all on this. So there's a live stream workshop that members get past and future.
So if you're not, listeners, if you're not a member of the Customer Experience Revolution, there is a link in the show notes, and I'll post a link across if you're watching this on YouTube, so that you can sign up and become a member. Members can attend live workshops with John and our VP of Consulting, Dave Murray, and they get to work on these hands-on. And if you've already missed the first one, don't worry, you can go back and play anything in the library. You have access to all of that as a member. And I'll put details about membership in the show notes as well. You have something to share with us, John?
Well, we like to end every podcast with my personal vision statement, which is to live an extraordinary life so countless others do. And I don't know if anyone sums it up better than this video I found online by Ryan H.D. Lombard. But what I try to say is living an extraordinary life, it's an obligation to live an extraordinary life so countless others do. Not so we have more cars, bank accounts, more vacations. It's the ripple effect. And so I stumbled on this video by his handle is Ryan H.D. Lombard, and I just love this. It's 21 seconds.
A lot of men in our society like to boldly shout, "I'm down for my life." Okay. Would you exercise for them? Would you eat healthy for them? Would you fix your sleep habits for them? Would you chase your dreams for them? Would you fix your bad habits for them? Would you live for them?
Love that. Thoughts?
Did that make you get up and work out this morning?
Yeah.
I like it. I think that's really good.
Yeah. Listen, for me, fitness and diet and alcohol and all that, in my 30s, I said it was important, but it wasn't a top priority. And it probably wasn't until I lost my wife that it really struck me that I have 3 young boys that are dependent on me. And, if I don't take care of myself, they could be orphaned or just as bad. Just, if I eat like shit, drink too much, don't exercise, I'm going to be a percentage of myself, which is cheating them. It's cheating my employees, cheating my clients. And so, that was a silver lining that I've, really have become obsessed with taking care of myself. So I'm here longer and quality is there.
I love that. Is it Carl Jung who said, we are not what we say we'll do. We are what we do.
Habits. Everything is about habits. Yeah, I love that quote.
Well, thank you, John, for another great episode. Thank you, listeners, for being part of the customer service revolution. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks, you,
John.
revolutionaries.
Thanks for listening to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DiJulius. Did you enjoy this episode? Consider leaving us a review. We value your feedback and love to hear how you're using the podcast in your organization. To hear more, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for being part of the Customer Service Revolution.